I always enjoy this event. It's my third time. I was telling David I'm like a veteran. This is the easy one, though. I just live about 20 miles or so up north. The other one had to fly to LA. That was a little bit more than 20 miles. Sometimes an exponent or something. I really appreciate you coming out. As they said there, I'll be having some books. I'll sign some books in the back there for sale if you're interested afterwards. And I want to describe during this speech what's in the book and why I think, and this may be tautological for many of you here, but why I think we're living through, a genuine crisis right now for our republic, folks. I don't want to scare anyone. I don't like giving macabre speeches, and I certainly don't want to be Debbie or Danny Downer in this case. But folks, we're living through right now really perilous times. You're living through right now, and I interviewed President Trump actually yesterday. I have a show on YouTube and a podcast where we do basically my commentary. It's a podcast and a video show. And we wanted to add a video segment as well. So I said to the Westwood One, which is one of my partners, I said, if we're going to do an interview, we got to come out with a bang. Like, who's going to be our first guest? They said, well, what about the president? I said, we could ask. And sure enough, there he was. He came on yesterday. So check it out on the YouTube. It's great because we talk about some of the stuff with him I'm going to address today. I just want to say as well, I just met Rich Little. How awesome is that? Rich Little. And I had a laugh. He told me he was a fan. I said, oh, no. You're Rich Little. It's the reverse. I'm a fan of yours. How great is that? Rich Little, I grew up with him. So awesome. And he looks better than I do. My gosh. I told him I thought you were a Rich Little impersonator of Rich Little because you look so incredible. And he does impersonations. All right, getting to the serious stuff of substance because this really does matter. I'm assuming many of you see me on Fox and other places doing commentary on this matter, but one of the bread and butter issues I've taken on my back in the last 2.5 years has been the Spygate scandal, the Mueller hoax. You may say, a hoax? What was a hoax? I'll get to that. And now what has morphed into the impeachment whistleblower gate hoax. Folks, you're witnessing right now in live time a three-prong attack on our president. We're living through the third prong now, but make no mistake, it's all one big scandal. And I'm going to tie this in for you, I guarantee, in a way you probably haven't heard before, that when you leave, you're going to understand that this was planned from the start, that they understood when one of these things was to fail, Plan B would take effect, and when Plan B failed, they were going to move on to Plan C. The downside to that is the whistleblower hoax, which is part 3 of this thing that we're going through now. When this fails, there'll be a Plan D. It's not going to end. How did this all start? Well, first, without relitigating the entire Spygate scandal, many of you who saw me speak here last year, that I kind of went through that whole thing. That speech, ironically, went viral. It got something like 3 million views online. Yeah, which was crazy. Some guy in the gym came up to me and he said, hey, are you Dan Bongino? I said, oh, do you watch Fox? He goes, no, never. He said, my girlfriend showed me this video of you with the Breakers last year. True story. He was like doing curls in the gym. So we don't need to relitigate that whole thing, but I want to hammer on a certain point of part 1 of the plot to take down Trump, which was the whole spying scandal on him. Folks, there's an interesting wrinkle to this thing that I write about in my book, which we have outside Exonerated, my second book. An interesting wrinkle that hasn't been considered on this. You've been told, right, everybody in this room, and you can just like, if you believe otherwise, let me know, certainly, but you've been told that the reason they spied on President Trump, even by a lot of conservative commentators out there, who I'm sorry, some of them just don't know the details of the case. You've been told that they used the Steele dossier, right? This dossier put together by Christopher Steele, full of the salacious, and remember all that stuff, the hotel room, it's a family-friendly crowd, we'll leave the rest out of it. Remember all the garbage against Donald Trump, the debunked Steele dossier. But you've been told, correct, that it was written by a former British spy named Christopher Steele. Folks, I'm here to tell you that that's all wrong. And the reason it's all wrong is the scandal. Steele may have had some role in the dossier, but ladies and gentlemen, if you check out the new book as well by Lee Smith, which is a good one. Lee's a great guy. Lee and I have had a long relationship. Lee, in conjunction with Devin Nunes and others who he speaks to in interviews, he reveals a nice tidbit of information that a lot of us knew, that the dossier scandal did not start with the Steele dossier. There were what Lee calls proto-dossiers. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, this dossier scandal that supposedly started right around the fall of 2016, there were dossiers that were appearing about Donald Trump weaving their way through the media circuit way before that. Now, obviously, you're saying, well, they must have been written by Christopher Steele, too, the accredited former Russia desk manager and British spy, right? Wow, what a resume to write about Russia. No. None of those proto-dossiers were written by Steele at all. They were written by Fusion GPS, Nellie Orr, and Glenn Simpson. Now, all of a sudden, what happens? These proto-dossiers, they have these fantastic charges about Trump being connected to organized crime. Trump's a mob boss. You can read them. You can read the proto-dossiers. Lee has snippets of them in his book, and I cover a lot of it in Exonerated as well. You'll read these stories about these connections to organized crime. Now, what happened? Sounds like a great line of attack to knock out a political candidate, right? President Trump, organized crime. Everybody backs off. We don't want to be connected to the Gambino crime family or anything. Donald Trump, this is crazy. Well, folks, the charges, like the later charges in the dossier, were absurd. Trump has no connection to organized crime. It was just dumb. So they pitched it out to the media. It failed. It flopped like a fish out of water on a boat deck. And they needed something else. And when I say they, I mean Team Hillary, the Democrats, and candidly, some of the rhino Republicans who had it in for Trump from the beginning. Make no mistake, although we didn't pay for the dossier, contrary to liberal mythology, there were Republicans early on involved in the plot to take down Trump. And anybody who tells you otherwise is lying. One of them isn't with us anymore. But his team was unquestionably involved. So the organized crime angle in the proto-dossiers, look, President Trump's a mob boss, goes nowhere. Because even the dopey media is smart enough to realize this is a total hit job. They have to try something else. So what do? And this is what I talk about in the book, Exonerated. They go back to something they'd already tried before. And what's that? The blank colluded with the Russian scandal. You may say, no, that's never been tried before. The first time I heard it was when they said Trump colluded with the Russians. No, it may be the first time you heard it, but it's not the first time they tried it. And in my book, I have the headlines for another guy who allegedly colluded with the Russians. And who was that? John McCain. Who was running in that election cycle against John McCain? Now, I know your default response is going to be, well, of course, Barack Obama. Yeah, you're only half right. Yes, Hillary was in that race until the end. They already tried this. I have the headlines in my book. John McCain, suspicious ties to Russia. They already tried this with the media. This is not a new scandal. Now, why did it go nowhere with John McCain? Because who was the president during the time? No, Bush. You think Bush was going to let the CIA and the FBI be weaponized to advance this BS scandal? They shut it down. It made a few paper headlines and it disappeared. So now the Trump organized crime, the Trump organized crime fiasco falls apart in the proto-dossier. So they must go to their shoebox full of like fake Republican scandals. They're like, hey, open up the box. Here we go. Russian collusion. Here we go. We tried this on McCain. Now Obama's president. Maybe we'll actually get somewhere this time. All of a sudden, you start seeing this dossier appear, allegations in the media, Trump's suspicious connections to Russia. Now, go back to the beginning. Why is it now critical that you understand that this was not Steele's dossier? Because, folks, Hillary's team understood completely that if they were to pitch to the FBI and the Central Intelligence Agency, Brennan and others, that a political firm, Fusion GPS, that's what they were, hired by Hillary, had generated this information on Trump and they wanted to spy on him using a FISA warrant, folks, they would have been laughed out of court. They would have been laughed out of court, and even the Comey-led FBI with that cabal at the top was not dumb enough to put their stamp of approval on what was clearly a political document. Somebody gets wind back at Fusion GPS on Team Hillary that, hey, the FBI, wink and a nod, said if this information came from somewhere other than a political firm like Fusion GPS, then we could probably take this really seriously. Get what I mean? Fusion GPS magically hires Christopher Steele, who hasn't been to Russia in 2 decades. He has no significant Russian contacts left at all. He hasn't been to Russia. He was outed in Russia decades ago. All of a sudden, the exact same information that Glenn Simpson, the players, the same plot line. Glenn Simpson wrote in an article, he's the guy who runs Fusion GPS, follow me. I need an audience ombudsman, like on my podcast sometimes, but this is a complicated case, but it matters. All of a sudden, the information appears in a new dossier, not about Russian organized crimes connection to Trump, but collusion with the Russian government itself, and the plot line resembles nearly exactly what Glenn Simpson, who runs Fusion GPS, wrote in a Wall Street Journal article when he was a journalist in 2007. I thought it was the Steele dossier, not the Simpson dossier, right? That's what you were told, right? Steele wrote the whole thing. As I say to anyone who will listen, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal in 2007, not 2017, written by Glenn Simpson himself, called Ex-Soviets Woo Washington. Read that article and read the dossier. You're going to say, oh my, this is the same thing. They basically slapped Trump's name on a movie script Glenn Simpson had wrote and told you Christopher Steele wrote it to give it an air of credibility. Now, in the interest of time, to phase 2 here. So that's phase 1 of the coup. Fake a story, fake the author of a story, Christopher Steele, making it seem authentic, get a FISA warrant, spy on the Trump team, take him out. Trump isn't taken out easily, as you can tell. He doesn't have a lot of time for BS. You may have missed that, but kidding, of course. That's what I love about him. I'm a Queens guy too, so I totally get it. Yeah, right? Before I move on, can I just explain to you the Queens mentality? It's kind of a joke, but it's not. For those of you from Queens, you know this. Like when you're from Queens, New York, one of the 5 boroughs, the problem you have growing up in Queens like I did is you never have the money or the prestige as the Manhattan kids. So nobody really respects your wealth and your power. But you're never as tough as the Brooklyn kids. You just have to say you're from Brooklyn. Everybody's like, they think it imbues you with Justice League-like powers. Like, don't fight him, he's from Brooklyn. So you're never tough either. Like, I'll fight him, he's from Queens, they're weak. So what happened, right? Am I making this up? You Queens guys know what I'm talking about. So everybody from Queens has an attitude. And everything's huge and tremendous and the greatest ever because you have to make up for that lack of prestige you have from not being from Manhattan and from not being tough enough to be from Brooklyn. So I'm from Queens. I'm the same way. That's why I'm a chatty Cathy. Trump's the same way. It's huge. The greatest ever. It's tremendous. You know, we used to joke in Queens, how much did your car cost? We'll divide it by 4. Because how much your car cost? $80,000, easy. It wasn't, it was probably $20,000. You're just an exaggerator. But that's just how Trump is. That's how, it's just the way it is. We're Queens guys, But Trump wasn't going to take, it's so true. He was going to take none of this lying down. So when phase 1 flops, don't make no mistake, the whole collusion hoax did some significant political damage to Trump. It delayed him for a year and a half. They move on to phase 2. Now, don't forget that part of phase 1 I told you about the proto-dossiers and who wrote them. The pre-dossiers were written by Fusion GPS and Nellie Orr, Bruce Orr from the Justice Department's wife. That's going to become important at the end. Remember that. It's going to tie this whole thing together. Phase 1 flops, they go to phase 2. Phase 2 is the backup plan, the Mueller probe. The Mueller probe was a hoax from the start. Not a hoax in that it wasn't real. There was actually a Mueller probe, but the Mueller probe had nothing to do with investigating Trump. You say, well, that can't be. Obviously, they were investigating Trump. You sure about that? Because if you read my book, we lay out pretty clearly how Bob Mueller knew no later than, NLT, no later than 2 months, I would say earlier, but absolutely no later than 2 months after he's hired, he knows he's investigating a complete total hoax. Believe me, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt by giving him that 2 months. Why? Because Bob Mueller is hired in May. He's hired in May of 2017. Well, what happens in July of 2017? The Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, in an investigation of the Hillary Clinton email case, comes across a series of emails and texts that, to call them damning, may be understatement of the millennium. He has the texts of the FBI investigators investigating Trump. You know the texts. The insurance policy, the Oconus laws, the smelly Walmart people, I hope he loses 100 million to one. Trust me, you haven't even seen the worst of those texts. I've got kind of a slight idea of how it's going to get a whole lot worse. Those texts are devastating. Mueller, with certainty, knows at this point He is not only not investigating collusion because there is none, he knows what he should be investigating is the biggest frame job set up in American history. That Trump had been framed and his team had been set up. He knows it. Now, keep the date in mind. July of 2017, Mueller's reading these texts. He's like, boys, we're in trouble. Instead of doing the right thing, don't you find it interesting how all of the seminal events in the Mueller fake investigation, all of them happened when? July of 2017. In other words, Bob Mueller panics and his team panics. They figure out they're investigating a hoax, and rather than getting in front of a microphone in front of the American people and saying, folks, I am deeply sorry. You have been subjected to the biggest hoax in American history. All of this really bizarre stuff happens in July. I lay it out in a book, in a timeline. Now it'll all make sense why they panic. They panic because they know they're investigating a hoax and they don't want to admit it. Who gets arrested at Dulles Airport in July of 2017 in an emergency PC arrest, despite the fact that he lives in Chicago? Papadopoulos, the linchpin to the whole case. I'm telling you, Mueller knows Papadopoulos has been framed by Joseph Mifsud, who's not a Russian agent who tells him about Hillary's emails. He's in fact a Western plant. I'm telling you, Mueller must know this. He's reading the texts. And instead of apologizing to Papadopoulos and giving him a cash award, they go to Dulles Airport and they arrest him in a panic trying to find the $10,000 I believe was planted on him overseas. Papadopoulos is smart enough to leave it behind. So what does he get arrested for? False statements on a probable cause arrest, no warrant, which in the federal system is bizarre. I was a federal agent. What else happens in July of 2017? Who else starts getting letters to him and his family threatening, you better cooperate or you're going to be in big trouble? Mike Flynn. Right around, conveniently, July of 2017, right after Mueller gets the text, right during that time period. Who else gets arrested in an early morning raid at his house? Totally unnecessary, by the way, because he's already cooperating. Paul Manafort, locked up, early 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning raid. Manafort's already cooperating. Why are you hitting his door at 6 o'clock in the morning? He's already cooperating. To shut him up, just like they needed to shut up Papadopoulos, in just enough time to enact phase 3. In other words, if we get Trump out of office and impeach him first, if we shut these guys up long enough, all this stuff will go away. By the way, what else happens in July of 2017? The House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, still being run by Republicans at the time, and Devin Nunes, who's fantastic, by the way, they issue a statement saying, we demand now a special counsel. Why do you think they did that? Do you think Nunes did that because he was bored on a weekend? Like, let's just call for a second special counsel in addition to Mueller. Because Devin Nunes probably saw the text too. So folks, phase 2 is the Mueller probe. Now, what happens with the Mueller probe? Just like phase 1, it's a fish out of water on the deck of a boat flopping around with nowhere to go. Because why? Trump doesn't give in again. Matter of fact, what does he do? He does what Trump always does. He doubles down. He gives them the double-barreled middle finger and says, guys, I'm not leaving office, so if you want to continue with this witch hunt, you go right ahead. But I'm going to start bringing it, and the howitzers are coming out soon. And he goes to war with them. He goes to war with them in the media like I've never seen a president do. Everybody told him, oh, quiet there, right? Yeah, good for him, right? Everybody's telling him, stay off Twitter, quiet down. Well, listen, folks, you can have problems with his tweets. That's fine. That's, listen, you don't have to agree with everything he says on Twitter. But looking back on it now and suggesting somehow that he should have stayed off Twitter while Mueller, quote, did his job, and we all know Mueller wasn't doing his job at all. He was doing the job of partisan Democrats. That strategy Trump played worked. Because it did. It was a big success. Mueller goes up in front of the committee, completely flops, and listen, I mean it with all due respect to the man's service. But Bob Mueller did some good things for the country. Folks, that's wonderful, and I appreciate that. I'm sincere when I say that. But folks, I serve the country too in a different role. I don't expect any of you, even though you're friends, to give me a pass. I'm serious. There are men and women in this room, many of you, by the way. I'll bet if I asked you to stand, there'd probably be half the room who've served in some capacity, police, law enforcement, military yourselves. I bet you get no pass from your friends at all. Your liberal friends, oh, you're a liar, racist, you hate women, kids, dogs, phobophobic, phobophobe, right? Well, is your response ever, hey, I was in the military or a cop? You'd be laughed out of. They'd be like, that's great, thank you for your service, but I still think you're a racist who hates women. They don't give you a pass ever. But all of a sudden, because Bob Mueller served, nothing's to be scrutinized ever about what Bob Mueller said. Well, Trump said, gee, no thanks, I'm going to fight back. And he won. Bob Mueller completely collapsed because he didn't even know basic facts about what was allegedly his own case, because his case was a hoax. Now phase 3 starts. Well, we face planted here, right to the concrete. What do we do now? Well, now we got to impeach him. Well, we can't impeach him on collusion. That was a hoax. We can't impeach him on obstruction. That was a hoax, too. He was clear to that. So let's make up another hoax. Now, conveniently, what happens the day before hoax part 3, the alleged phone call with Ukraine, right? What happens the day before? The day before is the Mueller hearing where the whole thing wraps up and he completely face plants. They don't even wait a day. They're like phase 3, initiate, Justice twins. They put their power rings together and they get going right away. They don't even wait a minute. They're like, we need phase 3. Now, I'm telling you, phase 3 had been in the works the whole time. Conveniently, a few weeks before the July 25th phone call, people start to leave the White House, the executive branch of government, from the National Security Council. And where do they go? You may say, well, they go to work for a Republican congressman, right? It was a Republican White House. No. They go to work for Adam Schiff. Wow, isn't that weird? That's crazy how that happens. So you're on the National Security Council working for Trump, supposedly in the interest of national security, and you leave to go work for sleazeball Adam Schiff, who's been involved in the hoax the whole time? Folks, they planned this thing. Why did they wait for the Ukraine call? They could have said this, by the way, about any phone call Trump made with any country. If you're going to make up what's in a transcript, make it up with Mexico, Russia, Cambodia, Kazakhstan. Why Ukraine? Why did they wait? And by the way, push Trump into making that July 25th call. It was not his idea. This is not open for dispute. They've already acknowledged, Vindman himself, Colonel Vindman of the National Security Council, it was their idea for Trump to call Ukraine. Why? They had to initiate part 3 of the hoax, and Ukraine was the perfect place to start. Because it's one seamless scandal. Because who wrote the proto-dossiers? Fusion GPS. The fake dossiers, about organized crime. Who wrote all that? Yeah, Fusion. Who worked for Fusion? Bruce Orr from the Justice Department's wife, Nellie Orr. Nellie Orr went up to Capitol Hill and swore under oath that in that dossier, when they started working against Trump, when she was doing information, Nellie Orr, she's putting information into these dossiers. She said she got information from one specific place. Oh, that's right, Ukraine. Crazy how that happens. All these coinky-dinks, right? Under oath has already said she got information from a Ukrainian former parliamentarian turned journalist, a guy by the name of Sergei Lyshenko. You can read it. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's Nellie Orr's sworn testimony in front of Congress. Now do you see why they needed to bait Trump in with Ukraine? It's the exact same scam they pulled in the collusion hoax. Democrats colluded with Russian sources to take out their political opponent and basically just erase Democrats and put Trump's name in there. Trump colluded with Russia. It's no more complicated than that. Do not overthink this. The Democrats colluded with Russians, knew they got caught. They know the media are idiots, so they know if they just erase Democrats and put Trump in there, the media would suck it right up without any evidence. It is no more complicated than that. When that flopped and Mueller flopped, they know they're in big trouble in Ukraine. There's no question they colluded with DNC operatives in the Ukraine, Alexandra Chalupa. It's already been admitted to. No question. They already know Joe Biden is waist deep in Ukrainian corruption. They already know one of the Fusion GPS employees, Nellie Orr, had colluded with Ukrainian lawmakers to hurt Trump. They just erased all of that and put Trump colluded with Ukraine. Look, he did it on this call. It is no more complicated than that. Now, one final angle, and I'll wrap this up. Conveniently, John Solomon, who does some spectacular reporting over at John Solomon Reports now. Yeah, he's wonderful. Colleague over at Fox now as well. John Solomon lately has been subjected to a vicious smear campaign by the New York Slimes and others. Now, you may ask yourself why, and what does that have to do with any of this? Because John Solomon uncovered a piece of information I was privy to from a separate source a long time ago as well, that in Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, you know who Marie Yovanovitch is? Yeah, the lady who was testifying yesterday, the ambassador? Yeah, who had the SADS because she was fired. As Devin Nunes, sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Devin Nunes had the best line of the day. Like, this sounds more like an HR complaint than an impeachment hearing. Right? Trump didn't like me, and by the way, he was really mean. If you ever watched The Apprentice, you're fired. Like, did she miss that? Like, it was his tagline. He trademarked it. Like, you're upset because you got fired? Like, what did you think this was? She thinks like this is a lifetime assignment. We're supposed to finance her lifestyle overseas if Trump doesn't like her. Too bad, get out. He ran on cleaning the swamp and firing people. You're good, goodbye. Thank you for your service, see you later. Here's where it gets fascinating. Solomon has a confirmed piece of reporting that Marie Yovanovitch and her deputy, George Kent from Ukraine, were colluding with the Ukrainian government on a do not prosecute list. In other words, these people are not to be touched. Who was one of the names on that list? Biden's the least interesting one. You may say, really? Not just Burisma. Lyshenko, the same Ukrainian lawmaker who was allegedly feeding information about the collusion hoax to Nellie Orr and Fusion GPS. It's one big scandal. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I'll leave you with this, because I know that can be a little bit depressing. Here's the good news. I know, I'm sorry, like I can't believe, I always say this is like a spy story for imbeciles. Not for you, the imbeciles who ran it because they weren't smart enough to cover their tracks. They were really stupid. There's paper trails for all of this. They were really that dumb. The good news is this. I get asked this question a lot. Is anybody going to get arrested? The answer, listen, hell if I know. I have no idea. I don't know that. I don't. I hope they do. I think McCabe's in a lot of trouble. I think Brennan's in a world of trouble. I'm done making prediction about who's going to get arrested and who won't. If they were Trump team members like Stone, they'd be in jail yesterday, of course. But people ask me, well, what's going to be justice for this? The answer is short answer, I don't know. I have no idea. But there's an election coming up. And I can tell you, 4 more years of Trump on this warpath against the deep state, ladies and gentlemen, I kid you not that we have a unique opportunity. I mean it. We have a unique opportunity in American history, on par with the Reagan era, to change and alter the course of this country for potentially decades. He can change the courts. We can re-elect people in Congress based on Trump's influence and ability to raise money. We can turn around the economy. We could finally get ourselves on a path where we're not slaves to this bureaucracy out there that seemingly runs our lives. What else do you spend your money on in your life that you work so hard to finance that you get less from than this wretched government? Thank God for our military and our courts, and I mean that, and everyone who served. And I will pay my last tax dollar to make sure that you are taken care of and that you can defend this country with the finest weapons on earth and get the best training. But outside of our fine military and our used-to-be decent courts, you are throwing your money down a toilet bowl with this crap government we have now. This is garbage. You're working up to 50% of your life to do what? Have some dude pick up the garbage twice a week? Well, you don't call the cops. Yeah, I had a house burned down once, so I used government services for 8 hours while they I'm not kidding, while they put the house out. What do you need the government for? You can do this locally. We have a unique opportunity to turn this around. You need to get out and vote, and you need to do the 10, 10, and 10 rule. What's the 10, 10, and 10 rule? Every month from now to the election, no excuses, none of this, I don't want to email my friends, I may lose them. You want to lose your country? I don't mind anybody's sob stories, I'm sorry. I don't have any friends left. And I'm really fine because believe me, we separated the wheat from the chaff. You have to email 10 people every month. What are you doing? You voting? You need a ride? The election's not till November. I don't care, I'll plan to ride now. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. You have to email 10 people. You have to call 10 people a month. You don't have to call them specifically about politics, but while you're on the phone, hey, you voting in 2020? I'm not sure. What do you mean you're not sure? No, not sure is not good enough. Be sure, like real sure. I'll be sure for you. I'll come pick you up on election day. Say, that's too much work. Really? Try saving your country when you lost it. That's a whole lot more work. Ask the revolutionary generation, right? Finally, 10 email posts, 10 social media posts, 10 phone calls. 10 social media posts is an easy one. I don't like to post that stuff on my Facebook. Again, too bad. You're not going to have a Facebook because you're going to wipe every conservative off the map if they elect Democrat. You're not going to have a Facebook left, so you're not going to have to worry anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no time for quitters. Now, you all are here. I've met many of you. I know many of you, and you are not the quitters. You are the front line of this battle. I mean that. I mean, I have friends in this audience, Linda and others, who have been at the front line, the tip of this spear before I was even born. Seriously, there are people in this room who have been fighting this fight a long time. But sometimes I get emails to my show. I'm done. This is too much. I can't take it anymore. Wait, are you serious? Are you kidding me? At Valley Forge, they ate their shoes. I'm not kidding. They boiled the shoe leather. They ate their shoes and froze to death. And you're complaining, what, your flat screen doesn't work so you can't watch it? I mean, that's your problem? Like McDonald's was out of extra large fries? Folks, there's no done. This is not a golf game. You know, a golf game, you can quit a golf game. Nobody cares. The golf course owner gets his money. The guy behind you plays through. Your partner's sick of you whining anyway. Go back to the cart. Nobody cares. That's not politics, okay? Politics is a boxing match with no referee. When you say I quit, quit isn't an option because the other guy's still kicking your ass. He's still punching you. It's not stopping. No, I said I quit. They don't quit. The Democrats don't quit. They're not interested. They're working on phase 4 now. Get to the polls, get this president elected, change your country in 2020, and I promise you, you'll be looking at a whole new tomorrow in 5 years. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. I'll see you all outside. Thank you. Go vote. 10, 10, and 10. Get busy. Good to see you all. Thanks a lot.